That's the wrong trick, said the new cashier to the millionaire CEO, seconds before the $200 million deal. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into today's story. Can kindness really change someone's life? Or is it just another way to get what we want? Let's find out. The story begins in a small, bustling city center, at the entrance of a high-end cafe known for its luxury clientele. A man in a dark suit, sharply dressed, stood outside, checking his watch impatiently. His name was Nathan Carter, a millionaire CEO of one of the largest tech firms in the country. He was waiting for the latest round of investors to arrive for an important meeting. His eyes were fixed on the door, but it was clear his mind was elsewhere. He had a lot on his plate today. The $200 million deal that had been months in the making was now at a critical point. He was ready, but as always, the pressure weighed heavily on him. Meanwhile, just a few feet away, a young woman walked by. She was carrying a tray of coffees from the cafe next door, her uniform stained with the wear of a long shift. Her name was Lily. She was the new cashier at the cafe, still getting used to the hustle and bustle of her job. She didn't know it yet, but today would change her life. Lily had always been a dreamer, an artist at heart, but life hadn't turned out the way she had planned. Juggling her job, bills, and her passion for painting was never easy. But she made it work. As she approached the entrance to the cafe, she saw Nathan standing there, looking out at the busy street. She couldn't help but notice the expensive suit and the air of authority that surrounded him. She had seen men like him before, rich, powerful, and cold. But she wasn't one to judge, especially not today. It had been a rough week. She gave a tired smile and continued walking, trying to avoid drawing attention to herself. But as she passed, she accidentally bumped into Nathan, spilling a bit of the coffee on his suit. She gasped, mortified. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, quickly trying to clean the mess. Nathan froze, his eyes narrowing as he looked down at the small stain. For a moment, the tension between them was palpable. But then, Lily looked up at him, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I didn't mean to," she muttered, her hands shaking as she tried to gather herself. Nathan glanced down at her, the annoyance in his eyes fading away. He had expected to be angry, but instead, he was taken aback by her vulnerability. "It's fine," he said after a moment, his tone softer than expected. "It's just a suit. No big deal." Lily blinked, surprised by his calmness. "Are you sure?" she asked, still trying to wipe the stain away. "I feel terrible about it." Nathan hesitated for a second, then chuckled lightly. "I'm sure. It happens." He smiled slightly, the edges of his stern expression softening. "But maybe I could use another cup of coffee." Lily gave him a small, nervous smile. "Sure," she said, nodding. "On the house, to make up for it." As she turned to head back to the counter, Nathan followed her inside. The small cafe, with its warm lights and quiet atmosphere, felt like a world away from the high-rise offices he was used to. It was refreshing in its simplicity. He wasn't sure why, but something about the place felt different. As Lily prepared a new cup of coffee, Nathan leaned against the counter, watching her work. She was efficient, graceful, despite the exhaustion evident on her face. He couldn't help but admire her determination. "So," he said after a moment, breaking the silence, "what brings you to work here?" Lily looked up from the coffee machine, surprised by the question. "I'm just trying to make ends meet," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I'm an artist, but you know how it goes. Bills come first." Nathan nodded, understanding the weight of that statement more than she could know. For a brief moment, the world seemed to pause. Lily wasn't the kind of person to strike up conversations with strangers, especially not with someone like him. But there was something about Nathan's presence that made her feel at ease. "I think it's great that you're pursuing your art," he said, his voice sincere. "Don't give up on it." Lily looked at him, surprised by his words. "Thanks," she said softly, almost to herself. As she handed him the new coffee, their fingers brushed for a split second. It was a brief touch, but it felt like a spark. She didn't know why, but something inside her shifted. She smiled, still feeling a bit awkward. "I hope this is better," she said, still trying to brush off the embarrassment from earlier. Nathan took the cup from her, his gaze lingering on her for a moment. "It's perfect," he said, his smile genuine. "Thank you." As he turned to leave, Lily watched him go, still unsure of what had just happened. The encounter had been brief, yet something told her it wasn't the last time they would meet. Little did she know, this seemingly insignificant moment would change the course of both their lives in ways neither of them could have imagined. I'm sure you're wondering what happens next. Well, after their unexpected meeting, life moved forward as it always does. Lily went back to her shift, trying to shake off the awkwardness of the encounter with Nathan. But as much as she wanted to forget about it, she couldn't help but replay the brief exchange in her mind. Nathan, the well-dressed CEO, who seemed so out of place in the cozy cafe, had left an impression on her. She couldn't put her finger on it, but there was something about the way he had spoken to her, as if he genuinely cared. It was so different from the way most people treated her. Lily pushed those thoughts aside as she focused on the customers. But every so often, her mind would wander back to Nathan, the man she'd spilled coffee on. Meanwhile, Nathan was still thinking about Lily as well. The moment he had stepped out of the cafe, he realized something. For the first time in a long while, he had been moved. By a stranger. By someone who had no idea who he was. It wasn't that he cared about the coffee stain. No, it was the interaction, the authenticity in Lily's apology, her vulnerability that struck him. He had dealt with high-profile clients, investors, people who were always too guarded, too perfect. But Lily? She was real, and that was refreshing. Nathan was used to being surrounded by people who saw him for his wealth, his status. But Lily had no idea who he was. She had no agenda, no hidden motivations. Just pure kindness. That thought lingered in his mind as he made his way back to the office. For the next few days, Nathan found himself distracted. The deal he had been working on for months was finally in its final stages, but he couldn't stop thinking about the cashier from the cafe. He had always prided himself on keeping a cool head in business, but now, it felt different. He wondered if the simple act of kindness had changed something in him, something he hadn't realized was broken. As the days passed, Nathan couldn't help but return to that cafe. He'd tell himself it was for the coffee, but deep down, he knew it was about something more. He wanted to see Lily again. Maybe it was the way she had looked at him, or maybe it was the sincerity in her voice when she spoke. Either way, he couldn't get her out of his mind. So he returned. This time, he made sure to stop by during a quieter part of the day. The moment he walked in, Lily was at the counter, preparing drinks. She didn't see him at first, and for a brief moment, Nathan hesitated. Was it strange to come back just for coffee? Was it too forward to want to talk to her again? But before he could second-guess himself, Lily turned and saw him. "Oh, it's you," she said with a small laugh, a bit of surprise in her voice. Nathan smiled. "It's me. I hope I'm not interrupting anything," he said. Lily waved it off. "Not at all. I'm just getting these ready. Can I get you something?" "I'll have the usual," Nathan said. "You make a mean cup of coffee." Lily raised an eyebrow, but smiled. "I don't remember you mentioning that last time." Nathan chuckled. "You'd be surprised what you notice after a second cup." They exchanged a few more words, and this time, the conversation flowed more easily. There was a comfort in their exchange, and for Nathan, it felt refreshing. For Lily, it was the same. She had never been one to engage in long conversations with customers, but there was something about Nathan that made her feel at ease. He wasn't like the others, the ones who looked down at her or ignored her. He treated her like a person, not just an employee, and that made her feel seen. As she handed him his coffee, their fingers brushed once again. This time, it felt different. Nathan held her gaze for a second longer than usual. The connection was undeniable. "I'll be around," he said, as he took a sip of his coffee. "I hope to see you again soon, Lily." "I'll be here," she said, her voice soft. He gave her a smile, a hint of something more behind it, before he turned and left the cafe. Lily watched him go, her heart pounding slightly faster than usual. She didn't know what it was about Nathan, but something had changed. She couldn't quite explain it, but she felt like this was the beginning of something different. As Nathan walked out of the cafe, he felt the same sense of unease mixed with anticipation. He wasn't sure why he kept coming back, but for the first time in a long while, he felt like there was more to life than just the bottom line. The $200 million deal, the office, the luxury cars, they all seemed insignificant compared to the simple connection he'd felt with Lily. It was almost as if she had reminded him of something he had long forgotten. Maybe, just maybe, it was time to look beyond the numbers and start seeing people for who they truly were. I'm sure you're eager to know how this story unfolds, so let's dive right back in. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls for Nathan. The $200 million deal he was working on was moving closer to closing, but somehow he found himself distracted, his thoughts wandering back to Lily. It wasn't just the coffee or the simple act of kindness she had shown him. It was something deeper, something he couldn't quite explain. Every time he passed by the cafe, he found himself looking in, hoping for another chance to see her. But he kept his distance, unsure of what would happen if they crossed paths again. Lily, on the other hand, couldn't stop thinking about Nathan either. She had never really paid attention to wealthy people before, but there was something about him that stood out. He wasn't like the others, those who came into the cafe and looked at her like she was just another face behind the counter. Nathan had a quiet confidence, a calm that made her feel comfortable. And the way he treated her, like she was someone worth listening to, it made her heart flutter in ways she hadn't expected. It was silly, really. She was just a cashier, and he was a CEO. There was no reason for her to feel this way. But every time he smiled at her, every time their hands brushed, it felt like something more was happening. One afternoon, as the cafe buzzed with the usual crowd, Lily was serving a customer when she noticed Nathan walk in. This time, he didn't wait for her to come to him. Instead, he walked up to the counter, looking right at her with a soft smile. "Hi, Lily," he said, his voice warm. "Do you mind if I join you for a moment?" Lily blinked, taken aback. She wasn't used to customers asking to sit with her, but there was something about Nathan that made it feel right. Sure," she said, motioning to an empty seat. He sat down, his gaze never leaving hers. "How's the coffee today?" he asked, his tone casual, but with an underlying curiosity. "Same as always," she replied, her smile shy. "It's nothing special, really." Nathan raised an eyebrow. "I beg to differ," he said, his voice playful. "You've got something special here. It's not just the coffee, it's the way you make people feel." Lily's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't used to compliments, especially not from someone like Nathan. But there was sincerity in his words, and it made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't invisible after all. "Thank you," she said quietly, looking down at the counter, feeling a flush rise to her cheeks. Nathan chuckled, sensing her nervousness. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I just think you're doing something amazing here, even if you don't see it yourself." Lily looked up at him, surprised. "You really think so?" she asked. "Yeah, I do," Nathan said, leaning back in his chair. "You're kind to everyone. You listen, and you do it all without expecting anything in return. That's rare." Lily was quiet for a moment, letting his words sink in. She had never really thought of herself as being special, just someone trying to make it through each day. But Nathan's words made her see herself in a different light. "I never really thought about it that way," she said, almost to herself. Nathan smiled. "Well, I'm glad I could give you a different perspective." For a moment, they just sat there, the hum of the cafe surrounding them. Lily found herself more at ease now, her nervousness slipping away. Nathan had a way of making her feel comfortable, like she didn't need to put up a facade. She could just be herself. As the minutes passed, their conversation turned to more personal topics. They talked about their dreams, their favorite places, and the things that made them happy. Nathan found himself sharing more with Lily than he usually did with anyone. There was something about her that made him open up, made him feel like he could trust her. Lily, in turn, felt a connection she hadn't experienced before. It wasn't just about the conversation, it was the way Nathan listened, the way he made her feel like she mattered. For the first time in a long time, she felt like someone truly cared. "I know this is a little crazy," Nathan said after a while. "But would you like to grab dinner sometime? I feel like we have a lot more to talk about." Lily looked at him, her heart pounding. This wasn't something she was used to. But there was something about Nathan, something that made her want to say yes. "I'd like that," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan smiled, his eyes lighting up. "Great. I'll pick you up tomorrow night at 7. Lily nodded, her nerves a fluttering mix of excitement and disbelief. "Tomorrow at 7, she repeated. As Nathan stood to leave, he gave her a final smile. "I'm looking forward to it, Lily," he said. "Me too," she replied, watching as he walked out of the cafe, her heart racing with anticipation. This was the beginning of something new, something unexpected, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead. I'm sure you're wondering what happens next. Well, the following evening, Lily stood in front of her small apartment, pacing nervously. She had never been on a date with someone like Nathan before. Sure, she had been out with people, but never someone with his level of success and sophistication. He was a CEO, after all. She was just a waitress, a struggling artist who didn't really belong in that world. She glanced at her phone again, checking the time. It was almost 7, and any minute now Nathan would pull up to the curb. Her heart was pounding in her chest as she forced herself to take a deep breath and calm down. This wasn't some big life-changing event. It was just dinner, right? But deep down, she knew it was more than that. There was something about Nathan that made her feel special. She wasn't sure if it was his kindness or the way he saw her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that their connection was real. Just as she was lost in her thoughts, a sleek black car pulled up in front of her building. She took another deep breath and walked outside, her nerves still tingling. Nathan stepped out of the car, looking effortlessly handsome in a sharp jacket and dress shirt, his hair neatly styled. He smiled when he saw her, a warm, inviting smile that made her feel at ease. "You look stunning, Lily," he said, his voice smooth and genuine. Lily's face flushed with warmth. "Thank you," she said, nervously adjusting her dress. "You look great too." Nathan reached out to open the car door for her, his hand lingering just a moment longer than necessary. "Shall we?" he asked, his eyes twinkling. Lily nodded, and as she got into the car, she couldn't help but feel like this was the start of something exciting. As the car drove through the city streets, they talked casually, finding more common ground with each passing minute. Nathan asked about her art, her dreams, and her struggles, listening attentively as Lily spoke about her passion for painting and the challenges she faced trying to make a living. She had never opened up like this before, but with Nathan, it felt easy. "I love how passionate you are about your art," Nathan said, his voice sincere. "You really believe in it." Lily smiled, surprised by his words. "Yeah, I do," she said. "It's hard sometimes, but I couldn't imagine doing anything else." Nathan nodded. "I get that. I've spent so much of my life focused on my career and business that I forgot what it felt like to be passionate about something that wasn't just about profit." Lily looked at him, noticing the slight sadness in his eyes. "I'm sure it's hard, running a business and trying to stay focused on the bigger picture." Nathan sighed. "It is, but that's the life I chose. Sometimes, I wonder if I've sacrificed too much in the process." They arrived at the restaurant, a cozy, upscale Italian bistro tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. It was warm and intimate inside, with soft lighting and a welcoming atmosphere. As they sat down at their table, the waiter brought them menus, and they continued their conversation. Over the course of the evening, they enjoyed each other's company, sharing stories, laughing, and getting to know one another. The connection between them grew deeper with every passing minute. Nathan wasn't just the successful CEO. He was a man with dreams, vulnerabilities, and a yearning for something more than the world he had built. Lily, for her part, found herself drawn to him in a way she hadn't expected. There was something about him that made her feel seen, valued, and respected. He wasn't looking at her as a waitress or as someone less than him. He was looking at her as an equal. By the end of the meal, they were both feeling lighter, more connected than they had been before. As they walked out of the restaurant, Nathan turned to her with a smile. "I had a great time tonight," he said, his voice soft. "I'm glad you agreed to join me." Lily smiled back, her heart fluttering. "Me too. This has been really nice." Nathan paused for a moment, as if thinking. "I know this might sound forward, but would you like to do this again sometime?" he asked, his expression hopeful. Lily's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected him to ask, but she realized that she wanted to see him again. "I'd like that," she said, her voice steady despite the excitement inside her. Nathan's face lit up, a genuine smile spreading across his features. "Great. I'll make sure to plan something even better next time," he said. As they said their goodbyes, Lily felt a sense of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe this was the start of something real, something she had only dreamed about. As she walked back to her apartment, she couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in ages, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. And Nathan, with his quiet kindness and the way he made her feel, was someone she was excited to get to know even more. I'm sure you're curious about how their story unfolds, so let's continue. Over the next few weeks, Nathan and Lily's relationship blossomed, and with each passing day, they found themselves growing closer. Their dinners, walks in the park, and casual chats during Nathan's visits to the café became a cherished part of their routine. Lily had never experienced a connection quite like this before. Nathan wasn't just a CEO. He was someone who genuinely listened, who cared about her dreams and her struggles. She began to feel like she could trust him, like he understood her in a way no one ever had. Nathan, for his part, found himself looking forward to every moment he spent with Lily. She made him feel alive again, like he could talk about things that mattered beyond the business world. Her creativity and passion for art reminded him of the simpler things in life, things he had forgotten in his pursuit of success. But there was still a part of him, a nagging doubt in the back of his mind, that kept him from fully embracing what they had. He was a millionaire, a man who had built his empire through years of hard work, while Lily was still finding her way. Despite the connection they shared, Nathan couldn't help but wonder if he was taking advantage of her kindness, or if she was just seeing him as something he wasn't. He had been honest with her about his career and his life, but there was one part of himself he had yet to share, the fact that he was, in fact, the CEO of a company that was about to sign a massive deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He had kept that part of his life separate from their relationship, afraid that if Lily knew the truth, it would change everything. One evening, as they sat together in a small art gallery, enjoying the paintings and the quiet atmosphere, Nathan found himself lost in thought. He had invited Lily there to share something he had never shared with anyone before, his love for art. "This place is incredible," Lily said softly, her voice full of awe as she gazed at the paintings on the walls. Nathan smiled, watching her as she admired the works of art. "I'm glad you like it. I've always loved art, but I don't talk about it much. It's one of the few things that makes me feel human." Lily turned to him, surprised by his words. "Really?" she asked. "I would have never guessed. You always seem so put together." Nathan chuckled, a bitter smile crossing his face. "I've spent so much time focusing on my career, on my company, that I lost touch with what really matters." He paused for a moment, his gaze shifting to a painting of a vast ocean. "I guess it's why I've been keeping so much of my life from you. I've been afraid that if I let you in, it would change everything." Lily frowned, her brow furrowing in concern. "What do you mean?" she asked. Nathan looked at her, his expression vulnerable for the first time. "I'm not just a guy who likes art," he said softly. "I'm the CEO of a company, a really big one. I've been working on a deal that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's about to go through. I've kept that from you because I didn't want it to change how you see me." Lily was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. She wasn't sure what to say, but then she realized something. She didn't care. The man she had come to know wasn't defined by his wealth or his job. He was kind, thoughtful, and genuine, and that was all that mattered. "Nathan," she said, her voice steady, "it doesn't change anything. You're still the same person I've come to care about." Nathan looked at her, his heart pounding. He had expected her to be shocked, maybe even angry. But instead, she had reassured him. The weight on his chest lifted, and for the first time in weeks, he felt at peace. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice full of gratitude. "You don't know how much that means to me." Lily smiled, taking his hand in hers. "I don't need to know everything about you to care about you. I care about who you are, not what you have." Nathan squeezed her hand, his heart swelling with emotion. He realized then that he had been holding onto so much fear, so many walls, when all he really needed was to trust her. In that moment, everything felt right. Their connection wasn't about status or wealth. It was about two people who had found each other, who had learned to see each other for who they truly were. As they stood there, surrounded by art, Nathan knew that what they had was real, and that it was worth more than any business deal or empire he could ever build. I'm sure you're wondering what happens next. Well, as time passed, Nathan and Lily's relationship continued to deepen. They spent more and more time together, each day feeling like a new adventure. The business world that had once consumed Nathan began to feel distant, and for the first time in years, he felt like he was living in the present. With Lily, he could forget about the pressure of running a multi-million-dollar company and just be himself. She had a way of making everything seem simpler, lighter. Lily, too, had begun to change. Her days were no longer just about making ends meet or struggling to find time for her art. With Nathan by her side, she felt a sense of security and warmth that she had never known before. He was supportive of her passion for painting, and he encouraged her to pursue her dreams, not just in the practical sense, but also emotionally. It was a new chapter for both of them, one that they never expected but welcomed with open arms. But life, as it often does, had a way of throwing obstacles in their path. One evening, as Nathan was finishing a meeting with his team at the office, he received a call from his lawyer. The tone of the conversation was serious, and Nathan's brow furrowed as he listened. "Nathan, there's an issue with the deal. There's a clause that the investors are questioning, and it's holding up the final approval." Nathan's mind immediately shifted gears. This deal was everything. The $200 million investment could change everything for his company. Without it, he might have to scale back on future projects, lose key talent, and the company's growth would be stunted. "What's the next step?" Nathan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "We'll need to meet with the investors again and address their concerns," his lawyer replied. Nathan's heart sank. He had already been through countless rounds of negotiations, and now, just when it seemed like everything was about to fall into place, a new obstacle had appeared. As soon as the call ended, Nathan sat back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The stress was unbearable, and he knew there was no way around it. He would have to dive back into work and fix this again. For a moment, he considered telling Lily about the situation, but then he remembered the promise he had made to himself, not to burden her with his work. She had enough on her plate with her art and her life. He didn't want her to worry about him or the weight of his responsibilities. But the more Nathan thought about it, the more he realized that keeping her in the dark wasn't the right choice. She had become an important part of his life, and he trusted her. She deserved to know what was going on. The next evening, after a long day of meetings, Nathan invited Lily to his apartment. He had been quiet all evening, lost in his thoughts, and Lily could sense that something was off. She had noticed how stressed he had been lately, how his smile seemed a little less genuine and his conversations more distracted. She had tried to give him space, but now, sitting across from him, she couldn't ignore the tension in the air. "Nathan," she said softly, "what's going on? You've been so distant lately." Nathan looked up at her, his face a mix of frustration and exhaustion. "I've been dealing with some issues at work," he said, his voice low. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of how much to share. But then, seeing the concern in Lily's eyes, he decided to tell her. "There's a problem with the deal I've been working on. It's not something I can fix overnight. I have to go back to the investors, and there's a chance the deal might fall through." Lily listened intently, her heart aching for him. She could see how much this deal meant to him, how it weighed on his shoulders. "Nathan," she said, reaching across the table to take his hand, "you don't have to carry this alone. I'm here for you." Nathan looked at her, surprised by her words. He had never wanted to burden her with his problems, but here she was, offering her support without hesitation. It was something he had never truly experienced before. "I don't want you to worry about it," he said quietly. "You've already been so supportive of me. I don't want to drag you into all of this." Lily squeezed his hand gently. "Nathan, I care about you. Whatever you're going through, we'll face it together. You don't have to go through this by yourself." Nathan felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had been so caught up in his own fears of letting her in, of pushing her away so that she wouldn't have to bear his burdens, but now, with her words, he realized that he didn't have to shut her out. He could lean on her, just as she had leaned on him. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I would do without you." Lily smiled, her heart full. "You don't ever have to find out," she said softly. And in that moment, Nathan realized that no matter what happened with the deal, no matter how the future unfolded, he had something more important than money or success. He had Lily, and that was enough. I'm sure you're eager to know what happens next. Well, the days that followed were filled with anticipation and uncertainty. Nathan threw himself into work, doing everything he could to salvage the deal, but the weight of the situation hung over him. He spent long hours in meetings, consulting with his team and negotiating with the investors, but nothing seemed to move the needle. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. As much as he tried to focus on his work, his thoughts kept drifting back to Lily. She had become his anchor, the one person who made him feel grounded amidst the chaos. Whenever he saw her, it was as if the world slowed down, and for a moment, the pressure of his job didn't feel so heavy. Lily, for her part, had been incredibly supportive. She understood the stress Nathan was under, but she also knew when to give him space and when to be there for him. She had always been an independent person, but there was something about Nathan that made her want to share everything with him. The more she learned about him, the more she realized that he was not just a successful CEO. He was a man who struggled with his own insecurities, just like everyone else. And that made her love him even more. One evening, as Nathan sat in his office, staring at the stack of papers in front of him, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from Lily. "Dinner tonight? I'm making your favorite." Nathan smiled at the message. It was the perfect distraction he needed. He hadn't had a proper meal in days, and the thought of spending time with Lily brought him a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a while. He quickly typed a reply. "I'll be there in an hour. Can't wait." When Nathan arrived at Lily's apartment, the aroma of freshly cooked food filled the air. She had gone all out, preparing a homemade Italian meal with all the fixings. The sight of the table, set with care, made Nathan's heart swell. It wasn't just the food, it was the gesture. It was the way Lily always knew how to make him feel cared for, no matter how chaotic his world became. They sat down to eat, and for the first time in days, Nathan felt like he could breathe. They talked about everything and nothing, laughing and sharing stories. Nathan found himself opening up to Lily in a way he hadn't done with anyone in a long time. He told her about his childhood, about how he had started his company from nothing, how hard he had worked to get to where he was. He spoke about the sacrifices he had made, the relationships he had lost, and the constant pressure to maintain his success. "I've always felt like I had to prove something," he said, his voice quiet. "But no matter what I achieve, it never feels like enough." Lily listened intently, her heart going out to him. She reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "Nathan," she said softly, "you don't have to prove anything to anyone. You've already built something incredible, but you don't have to do it alone. You have me now. And I'm here, not because of what you've accomplished, but because of who you are." Nathan looked at her, his eyes filled with emotion. He had never heard anyone speak to him like that before. Lily wasn't impressed by his wealth or his success. She loved him for the man he was. And in that moment, Nathan realized how much he had taken for granted. He had spent so much time focusing on the future, on building his empire, that he had forgotten to appreciate the present, the people who mattered. He had nearly lost everything. But somehow, with Lily, he felt like he had finally found something worth fighting for. After dinner, they sat on the couch, talking more about their dreams, their fears, and everything in between. Nathan realized that he didn't need to have everything figured out. He didn't need to have all the answers. What mattered was that he had someone by his side who supported him, who believed in him, and who loved him for who he was. As the evening came to a close, Nathan stood up, pulling Lily into a warm embrace. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for being here, for believing in me." Lily smiled, holding him tight. "I always will, Nathan. No matter what happens, I'm here." The next day, things began to fall into place. Nathan's team worked tirelessly to address the investors' concerns, and with Lily's unwavering support, he was able to approach the situation with a renewed sense of clarity. He didn't have to face the challenges alone. With Lily by his side, he felt like he could overcome anything. The deal was eventually signed, and Nathan's company continued to thrive. But it wasn't the money or the success that mattered to him anymore. It was the love he had found, the connection he had made with Lily, and the understanding that no matter what life threw his way, he would never have to face it alone. I'm sure you're wondering how everything ends, and I'm here to tell you, it's only just the beginning. As Nathan and Lily's relationship continued to grow, they both found themselves at a crossroads, each realizing that the choices they made now would shape the rest of their lives. Nathan, with his newfound clarity, realized that his life had been focused on building an empire, but now, he was ready to build something more meaningful, something that could last beyond the walls of his office. Lily, on the other hand, had always dreamed of becoming a successful artist, but with Nathan's unwavering support, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could make that dream a reality. One day, as they walked through a park near Lily's apartment, Nathan turned to her with a look of determination. "Lily," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion, "I've been thinking a lot about what I want in my life, and I realized something important. I've spent so much of my time focused on work, on success, but I've never truly focused on what makes me happy. And what makes me happy is you. Lily stopped walking, surprised by his words. She turned to face him, her heart racing. Nathan, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. What are you trying to say? Nathan took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. What I'm trying to say is that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. You've brought something into my life that I didn't even know was missing. Love, peace, and the kind of happiness I've been searching for. I want to build a future with you, Lily. Tears filled Lily's eyes as she looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She had never imagined that someone like Nathan, someone so successful, would feel the way he did. But in that moment, it didn't matter who he was or what he had accomplished. It only mattered that he was standing there, asking for her to be a part of his life forever. Yes, she said, her voice breaking with emotion. Yes, I want that too. Nathan smiled, a sense of relief washing over him. He had been so afraid of losing her, of not being able to balance his work with his personal life. But now, with her words, he knew that he didn't have to choose between the two. He could have it all. A future with Lily was all he needed to make him feel complete. A few months later, Nathan and Lily found themselves standing in front of a small, intimate group of family and friends, ready to make their commitment to each other official. The venue was simple, but beautiful, and the atmosphere was filled with love and joy. As they exchanged their vows, Nathan looked into Lily's eyes, his voice steady and full of emotion. Lily, he said, I've spent my life building things, but nothing I've built has ever meant as much as you. Do to me. You've shown me the true meaning of love, and I promise to spend every day making you feel cherished, valued, and loved. Lily smiled through her tears, her heart full. Nathan, she said, her voice shaking slightly, you've given me more than I could ever ask for. You've given me the courage to follow my dreams, to be the person I've always wanted to be. I promise to stand by you, support you, and love you through every challenge we face, because I know that together, we can conquer anything. The vows were simple, yet they held so much meaning. They had both come from different worlds, yet they had found each other, and in each other, they had found the strength to face whatever life threw their way. As they exchanged rings and sealed their vows with a kiss, their friends and family cheered, and the love that filled the room was palpable. Nathan and Lily knew that this was only the beginning of their journey together. It wasn't going to be easy. Life would throw its challenges at them, but they had each other, and that was all they needed. As the reception went on, Nathan and Lily danced together, lost in the moment, feeling the weight of the world lifted off their shoulders. In that moment, everything felt perfect. There were no more fears, no more doubts, only the certainty that they had found something truly special. And as they danced, surrounded by the people they loved, they knew that their future was bright. Together, they would create a life full of love, laughter, and dreams fulfilled. And no matter what came their way, they would face it all hand in hand. I'm sure you're wondering how their story ends, and I'm happy to share that with you now. After their beautiful wedding, Nathan and Lily started a new chapter in their lives together. As they settled into married life, their connection grew even stronger. Nathan continued to build his business, but now, with a renewed focus. He had learned that success was not just about numbers and deals. It was about the people you care about and the love you share. He dedicated time to Lily, to their relationship, and to making sure that their life together was filled with happiness, not just achievements. Lily, too, found herself growing more confident in her art. She had always dreamed of becoming a successful artist, but now, with Nathan's unwavering support, she began to take the steps she had always been too afraid to take. She held her first art show, showcasing her paintings in a local gallery. The night of the exhibition was magical. Friends, family, and even some of Nathan's colleagues came to see her work. Lily was overwhelmed by the support, but what stood out the most was Nathan's pride as he stood by her side, holding her hand and smiling at her achievements. He had always believed in her, but now, he was seeing her dreams come to life. You did it, Nathan whispered to her as they stood together in front of one of her paintings. I knew you could. Lily smiled, her heart full of love and gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, she replied softly. You gave me the courage to believe in myself. Nathan kissed her forehead, his heart swelling with pride. You did it all on your own, Lily. I just had the honor of supporting you. As time went on, they continued to support each other, facing challenges together and celebrating the victories, both big and small. They knew that life would never be perfect, but they also knew that as long as they had each other, they could overcome anything. A year later, Nathan's company hit a major milestone, securing the largest deal in its history. It was a moment of triumph, and Nathan couldn't have been more proud. But when he looked around the office, surrounded by colleagues and investors, he realized that the real victory wasn't the deal. It was the life he had built with Lily. He no longer measured his success by the amount of money in his bank account or the size of his company. He measured it by the love he shared with Lily and the fulfillment he felt in his heart. One evening, as they sat together on the balcony of their apartment, watching the sunset, Nathan turned to Lily with a smile. "I know I've said this before, but I want to say it again," he began, his voice full of emotion. "You've changed my life in ways I never imagined. You made me realize that the things I thought were important don't matter as much as I thought. What matters is us, this life we've built together." Lily took his hand, her eyes filled with love. "I feel the same way," she said, her voice soft but sure. "I used to think that success meant doing it all on my own, but now I know that it's about having someone who believes in you, who supports you through everything." Nathan smiled, pulling her closer. "And I will always believe in you, Lily. No matter what comes our way, we'll face it together." And so, as the years passed, Nathan and Lily's love only grew stronger. They built a life filled with laughter, art, success, and most importantly, each other. They traveled together, explored new passions, and continued to support each other's dreams. Their story was one of love, growth, and partnership, a reminder that the best things in life aren't the ones you can buy or measure. They're the people you share your life with, and the love that sustains you through it all. In the end, Nathan and Lily learned that true success is not about what you achieve on your own, but about what you build together with the ones you love. And as they looked back on their journey, they both knew that the love they shared was the greatest success they could ever have hoped for.